Hello, everyone. Welcome to Unfinished Film Thoughts. I'm here again, talking to no one, and I'm still struggling to come to terms with how to do that. It feels strange to just speak to a wall sometimes, but that's what I'm doing. Listen, I've been thinking loads about Ryan Coogler lately, not in an obsessive way, but more in a way that I think he's a phenomenal filmmaker, and I think that Sinners is dominating conversation coming up. I know there's some awards stuff going on right now, and I know that the Oscars are around the corner. Well, somewhat around the corner. They're still a couple of months away, but whatever. And Sinners is obviously in that conversation, and it got me thinking that Ryan Coogler really has kind of had this enormous rise to director stardom, where he's kind of like with Sinners, proving that he's getting that Chris Nolan treatment now, where he can kind of just go to a studio and say, this is my idea, give me a bunch of money, please. And if you look at him as a filmmaker, he's had this really, really interesting rise. He has gone from making tiny 85-minute indie movies, which is the one I'm going to talk about at length in a minute, to then making Creed, kind of reinventing this massive IP from back in the day and putting a fresh lick of paint on it and transforming it in a way for new audiences, to then be kind of snatched up and kind of put into the machine that is Marvel. Which sounds like I'm speaking about it in negative connotations. I'm not. I just mean to say that it's, Marvel movie making is an extremely different process to like making an indie movie by yourself and a couple of mates and stuff. And he made Black Panther, he made Wakanda Forever. He has obviously then taken that kind of success that he's had with Marvel and used it to position himself in a place where he can put more money and time into telling original stories and kind of flexing his pen more as a writer, because he often says in interviews he feels more of a writer than a director, which is crazy levels of humble, because if I was this good at either of them two things, I would not shut up about it. I don't know, just hearing all this stuff about Sinners lately has really got me thinking about Ryan Coogler and where he started, and it kind of got me interested to go back and revisit Fruitvale Station, which is his directorial debut. If you're not familiar with it, this is the story of this absolutely fucking horrible tragedy that happened in, I think 2009, or New Year's Eve 2009, yeah. But basically, there was a man called Oscar Grant. He was in his early 20s. He was coming home from a New Year's Eve party. He had a partner, a kid, a mother. Like, he had a rich life, he had friends, and tragically his life was cut short by means of complete police brutality, right? His rights were continuously abused. He was compliant with police, and obviously they saw fit to kind of exercise their racial prejudice and murder him, which is obviously horrendous and heavy, and this movie really, really treats it with all the respect that it deserves. And to be honest, I kind of just wanted to talk about it because I watched it for the first time about a year ago or so, and I rewatched it again the other day, and I've just kind of been thinking about it. And yeah, I've got thoughts on it. This is what this is for. I want to say some stuff about it. I think Fruitvale Station is incredible. It's an 85-minute movie, right? It's an absolute breeze to watch, but by the end of it, you feel like you've lived a life. Like, you feel like you have experienced, the movie centered around the character of Oscar Grant's last day, and then obviously tragically how it ends. And the movie does build this sense of foreboding and this sense of dread in and throughout that day, in just the actions he takes. It's a movie where you kind of spend the entire runtime going, no, I don't want this to end the way it's going to end. But saying all of that, it's a movie that is so well realized through the performances. I think Michael B. Jordan's performance, especially obviously playing the lead, is incredibly touching. He creates a full character, despite only being able to exercise the actions of this character's last day. You really, really get a sense of a life lived through his relationships with his girlfriend, his daughter, his friends, his boss. You see his demeanor and his reaction to events that unfold around him, and you can see that the character is judging reactions based on past experiences. There's a scene in a prison where he is kind of instinctively aggressive towards someone who kind of like has some less than pleasant words to say about him and his mum. And then later on, when he's confronted by this same person who he previously told, we'll deal with this outside, like when I see you about. Later on, when those two encounter each other again, you can tell that life means more to him on the outside of prison, and he thinks about it more. On the inside, where this man can't hurt his girlfriend or his daughter or his friends, he doesn't necessarily care about himself, but he does deeply care about preserving the life that he has retained since leaving prison, and then therefore tells that man, this is not the time, this is not the place. Obviously, that doesn't really go to plan, but I do love that you can see in his performance those layered decisions, those nuances of, I am a character with experiences, I'm not just a run-of-the-mill guy living out the motions of my last day. It feels extremely personal to Michael B. Jordan to play a character who has wants, desires, thoughts, and feelings. And I think to limit the storytelling structure to just his last day could have been really limiting, but in a way, Michael B. Jordan finds it almost liberating. The other thing that I really, really enjoyed during this is how understated this is for a directorial debut. Ryan Coogler's obviously gone on to make incredibly stylistic and impressive movies, right? The ones that jump to mind, obviously, like I said in the intro, Sinners. One of my personal favorites is Creed. He obviously made the massive fucking cultural juggernaut that was Black Panther. And why I bring these up is because I think that it's important to note that Ryan Coogler can be an incredibly stylish director. He really, really knows how to take the medium of film and constantly remind you that it is such an expressive medium. He knows how to move cameras in the right way. He knows how to bring a score in to invoke the proper emotions at the right time. He is really, honestly, brilliant at using every single tool in his kind of director's tool belt or arsenal or whatever you want to call it. Black Panther, obviously very, very stylish movie. I know it's got those kind of CGI problems in the back end where it kind of feels like two PlayStation 2 cutscene characters are having a fight with each other. But when you think about it in terms of expression on screen, right, Wakanda is such a rich and well-realized environment. I think the costumes are, like, incredible. I think Kendrick Lamar and TDE, I think, produced the soundtrack to that. And that's fucking great. I'm still listening to that some, like, almost 10 years later or whatever it is, right? Some of those tunes are absolutely fucking incredible, right? But more importantly, in terms of how it relates to the movie, is it serves as this undercurrent, this backbone in the beating heart of the movie. It brings an energy to it that otherwise kind of wouldn't have been there. I think also, if you want to use a different example, Creed is absolutely phenomenally stylish, right? It is a movie that is always communicating. It may not have the most polished kind of next level, every frame a painting kind of shots and compositions in the entire movie, right? But if you look at it and you're tapped into the emotional journey of a character, right? You've got Adonis Creed, right? Kind of continuously battling the legacy of his father, right? Is it something that he's going to carry? Is it something that he's going to reject? Is it something that he can change and kind of warp to suit himself in the life that he has now without his father in the picture anymore, right? And there's shots where he's like shadow boxing next to a projector to learn the art of boxing and to kind of practice. And to keep himself fit and stuff, but also it's just showing you that he's constantly in the shadow of his father, and it's very, very interesting that it kind of flips the angles, and sometimes he's fighting Rocky, who was the opponent of his father, but also sometimes he's fighting his dad himself, whilst mimicking the moves. All of that is so thematically dense, and I could make a whole fucking episode talking about just kind of the implications of that shot and what it means for the character. I think he's also really, really good in that movie about communicating distance through doors and thresholds and spaces, about characters putting up walls and letting themselves in and kind of keeping people at arm's length, but then having those moments where they close themselves off and open themselves up to people. It's such a brilliantly shot movie. But anyway, the reason I bring all of that up is to just say that it is not an unintentional choice. It's not like Ryan Coogler didn't have the source when he made this film purposely restricted. This is an incredible directorial debut because of how restricted it feels. I mean, fuck, look at the barn sequence in Sinners, right? You're never going to convince me that this man doesn't have the fucking juice. I think in this instance, Ryan Coogler really understands that the story is the power, and the story itself is so shocking, right? And I don't say that lightly. I mean, after watching this movie, I looked up what actually happened to Oscar Grant and in Fruitvale Station, and obviously how it all transpired with the officers that essentially murdered him. I looked up how all of that transpired, and it is a shocking story. It's one of them things where you read and you go, you essentially lose faith in the world for a second. You kind of go, if this is allowed to happen, then how just and fair can this world be? Because there is not a part of this that feels right. There is not a part of this that feels justified. It's horrendous. And I think Ryan Coogler, in the making of this movie, really, really, really understands that the story is shocking in itself enough that the film doesn't need to rely on bells and whistles. You don't need kind of loud and bombastic editing. You don't need loud and bombastic scoring and soundtrack to make this work. You really just need to rely on the presentation and adhering to a presentation that allows you to connect on a deeper level with the character who, you know, is struggling to get to terms with dealing with money, struggling to get to terms with dealing with his relationships, struggling to get to terms with employment. This is a story that is so intrinsically human and grounded that to present it in a way that feels larger than life would almost betray the essence of this tragedy. I think that this is an incredibly intelligent movie that offers little to no solution because there's nothing that Oscar Grant could have done better. It's one of them situations where he lays the problem out in the sense that Ryan Coogler goes, here it is. This is the pure ugliness. Here it is laid bare for us all to confront and sit in and look upon how disgusting some actions by people, and in this specific scenario, cops as well. These are horrible actions undertaken by disturbed and insane people who should never be allowed to wield any sort of societal authority. You know, it's the age-old thing. Who do you call when the police are the aggressors? How do you seek justice when the justice system itself is stacked against you, right? This movie, I think, lays that out and is very brave in its examination of the fact that there was nothing that could have been done better. This movie takes every opportunity to show Oscar doing the right thing, complying, naturally feeling that chaotic panic that comes with being in a stressful scenario where you feel like your life is endangered, right? Every single person around him, his friends, his family, are attempting to do the right thing. And it's still not enough. So it does land home this point of, at what point do you have to say this is the wrong thing to do by the people who have the upper hand? And look, this is nothing new. Obviously, this is nothing new. I think one of the saddest things about this movie is the fact that it was made in 2013 and still feels depressingly timeless. Something that this film does so well is presenting Oscar as a man and not just a martyr, not just a symbol, not just that story. He's not a man attached to Fruitvale Station in the way that this movie spends its third act there, but the entire movie is so much more about how his life is, how we understand him as a person before we get to deal with the terms and grapple with the fact that he's been ripped away from us at a horrifically young age. Oscar in real life and in the movie as well was 22 years old. Which is obviously fucking awful, right? Like, I'm 28 years old and 22 feels like a lifetime ago. That is incomprehensible to think that someone's life could end so short and someone's life could be cut so short and someone's life could end so soon. And on a personal note as well, like, this guy had a kid and I have had a kid this year, and the thought of kind of leaving that kid's life is it's horrendous to think about. Genuinely, like, awful. There are some heartbreaking line deliveries. Michael B. Jordan's first line after being shot, as Oscar Grant exclaims just pure shock that, one, he's been shot, and two, that he has a daughter. And that's the backbone of the story, I think. This is very much a story of a young man living for other people, to provide for his daughter, to provide for his girlfriend. Mistakes have been made along the way. No relationship is ever necessarily perfect, but no one deserves this. No one deserves this kind of treatment. And I think also Octavia Spencer playing the role of his mother is phenomenal in that almost accepted sadness. The ending sequence where the doctor has to tell her that Michael B. Jordan's character, Oscar Grant, has not survived the surgery is truly heartbreaking, because you see her almost undertake the role of a community that understands that this is sadly all too often. There's immediately a sense of self-blame in that I asked him to take the train. If I hadn't have told him to be on that train, then he wouldn't have been there and this wouldn't have happened. And realistically, obviously, that's entirely putting the blame in the wrong hands. It's a movie that I think is so incredibly intelligent at presenting characters as ideas, but also never losing sight of the fact that these are real people. Grief feels personal and grief feels well explored, but also these people are emblematic of a community and these people are emblematic of an unfortunately all too often shared and communal tragedy and experience. I wanted to quickly talk about the lingering sense of dread throughout the movie. I've already told you kind of what happens throughout it, right? But the movie in the opening telegraphs that something is going to happen, using the real life footage of kind of disgraced passerbys, documentation and recording of the police and their mistreatment of Oscar Grant. It's an incredibly powerful thing to do that, because immediately, in terms of a storytelling perspective, it puts me in the mindset of that was deplorable. And it takes me on a journey of saying, this is how senseless and how quickly a life can be snuffed away. Now you have to grapple with the fact that this was a real person. You don't get to disconnect. So often you see these videos, right? Especially since fucking Twitter's algorithm has been hijacked by Nazis. You see videos like this all the time. It's entirely too often of just, look at this disgusting fucking thing. Look at this horrible action. Look at this person being harassed. These are all videos that people have taken and posted to the internet. But in that comes the ability to feign ignorance and to scroll away and to pretend you didn't see it and to go, this is nothing to do with me. I didn't harass this person. I wasn't being harassed in this video. You can disconnect with it quite quickly. You can put your phone away. You can close the app. You can go read a book. You can go cook some dinner. You can forget about it. And this movie shows you this horrible, deplorable act of senseless violence and then asks you to sit and watch the story of the incredibly personal and human moments that lead up to this incredibly dehumanizing end. It's an incredibly hard-hitting film, and I think a movie that, not to be overly personal, obviously I wasn't having a great day when I watched this, but this is deeply emotionally affecting. This is a movie that it made me really cry afterwards, and not in the way of like, a solemn tear like dropped from my face whilst watching the ending of Finding Nemo or something, right? This was genuinely, this kind of rocked me a little bit. And I don't mean in the sense that I could necessarily find myself in this same scenario. Like, obviously, speaking as a white person, I do have to acknowledge some inherent privilege that I am not targeted just for simply taking air into my fucking lungs by these absolute brutes. But this sense that you do reevaluate your life and think about those connections you have. Life could be over at any second, and there is this tragic realization that time can be short, and it can be even shorter than you think it might be. It'll never be me. It'll never happen. And I can guarantee watching this movie that the same thing was in the mind of Oscar Grant, who is having these deeply personal conversations with strangers. This is an expressive and open and emotionally intelligent man communicating to random strangers, hey, I love my girlfriend and I think I might propose to her, right? This is a man who thought he had a future, and the fact that it was snuffed and taken away so cruelly and senselessly and needlessly is just, the words aren't there. You can't grapple with how horrendously upsetting that can make you feel. I sat with this movie for a while. Ryan Coogler choosing this project as his directorial debut is so incredibly impressive and so incredibly interesting when it comes down to him expressing his passion, which is finding a voice for those who may not have had it and uplifting their stories and putting them on a pedestal, I think. I've listened to a whole bunch of Ryan Coogler interviews lately, and something that he keeps saying is how he can't really enter a job in terms of a director or a writing perspective if he can't feel that emotional attachment to the thing, which is very, very admirable. And I think that is very, very evident in prior works, right? You've got Coogler reframing masculinity away from bravado and dominance in Creed, and showing that strength kind of comes from more of an empathetic lens, this dedication to discipline and endurance and emotional honesty and respect and love for the people in your life. And I'm aware that he gave Rocky a storyline where he has cancer and is unwell, and it's okay to be weak and it's okay to need help. And he did that because I believe his dad was quite unwell at the time. Also, similarly to that with the familial connection on Sinners, I know that it was his uncle that shared a lot of the blues music with him when he was younger, and he kind of saw that as a way of expression, and he was introduced to that at a formative age where he was able to kind of take it on and really hear it in a different way than how most kids would hear it if their dad was showing them tunes of their day or their uncle was showing them tunes of their day or whatever, and they'd be like, yeah, all right, turn this off. I want to go listen to the cool modern stuff or whatever. But anyway, yeah, back to Fruitvale Station. I would recommend watching this. I would recommend watching this movie on a day where you feel a bit more mentally prepared to watch something so hard-hitting. Take a look into a life of a human being that we are probably unfamiliar with. I've never been in a scenario where I've really had to struggle to find a job. I've never been in a position where I've feared for my own life through no action of my own. Like, it's an affecting movie, it's a personal movie, but also it's not just restricted to that third act tragedy. It's also a movie about soul and about humanity and about how the path of bettering oneself is often sometimes plagued by life kicking you when you're down, but also it can have a profound effect on the mind to try and do better. This is a lovely movie. It's a sad movie. It's a hard movie, but I'm really glad I watched this. It's 85 minutes. Stick it on. Definitely don't stick it on if you're already having a rough day. Anyway, that's me on it. So I'm going to do that thing now where I read out a review and hear a little difference of opinion, right? I really like this movie. I am curious to hear a different perspective and hear what someone that maybe didn't like this movie so much has to say on it. I always do this. It's a fun little game I play where I just kind of scroll through Letterboxd and try and find something that amuses me or something that I have a strong reaction in the opposite way to. I basically like to argue with no one about it, so that we can do that together. That sounds like fun. So this person, Glenn, says reprehensively simplistic. Sundance can no longer be taken seriously. If you think that this movie is kind of simplistic because Ryan Coogler hasn't got the juice to bring to it, then I really, really don't know what to tell you, mate. Maybe this person has seen Sinners since and has gone, oh yeah, maybe this guy has got the sauce to him. And I even think that this being as early in his career as it was, like his first fucking feature film, he shows a remarkable fucking steady hand, a remarkable dedication to the craft. By shooting it handheld, you are not communicating that you don't know how to fucking mount a camera rig or whatever. You're communicating the fact that you think the story is intimate and personal and should be kind of approached with this rougher presentation style, in the sense that Oscar Grant's life was not smooth sailing. It had trials and tribulations. He had troubles with securing jobs. He had troubles with the relationships in his life. He had a past to him that he was doing his very, very best to not let define him. And I think having that kind of loose structure through the camera is very, very key to communicating that. Anyway, I disagree. I mean, I always disagree. The whole point is finding a different perspective. I would, do you know what I would really love? I would really love it if one time I read something and I went, oh, they've got a point there. Maybe this isn't as good as I thought, but this is really good. This is a really good film. So I don't know what to say. Anyway, thank you so much for listening to this. If you've enjoyed it, give us a little review. You can give us a little review if you like. Preferably a 5-star one would be nice, but this is a new show, so we're going to be lacking in that review department. So if you wouldn't mind just tossing a nice word, if you feel like expressing one, that would be absolutely lovely. Go and listen to the other shows on the network. We've Still Got Legs, which is a Doctor Who rewatch podcast that I host with my cherished and lovely friend Nathan Bauer. You can also go and listen to Brian and David of the Talking Pictures podcast, talking about all things movies. They are also starting up a new podcast, very, very exciting, but I'll let them tell you more about that when you go over to their feed. The Fishing Trip Files is a Gavin and Stacey rewatch podcast that is officially wrapped up. You missed it. You need to go over and check it out now that you can rewatch the entire series and listen to the entire podcast alongside. But anyway, go and do all that fun stuff. I will see you the next time I record one of these. Thank you very, very much for your patience. Thank you for your indulgence. I will see you whenever I see you.